What any religious tradition ascribes as God's will is no concern of this Congress.
The suppression of the objective truth of God leads to a subjective nightmare, my friends. And our culture is going through it right now.
Senator, I'm a Christian.
I understand you are a Christian.
As a Christian, I believe that speaks clearly with regard to the centrality of Jesus Christ in salvation.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the King of the Cosmos. I'm so glad that you got to join in today. A day late, I know, I'm so sorry, but I've had like the crud for a whole week, and so it really just took it out of me. I couldn't do the podcast yesterday. I didn't even get to teach Wednesday, but I'm well enough to get in the office and, you know, get a few things done today. And I figured, well, let's go ahead and do a King of the Cosmos today, but it's not going to be your typical King of the Cosmos, because normally what we've been doing with the podcast, the show, is that we've been mirroring what's been going on during Wednesday night class here at Otisville. But I was sick. I couldn't teach class on Wednesday. And so, Nathan, what are you doing on here wasting my time? I'm going to get to it. We're just going to do a one-off study today. We're not gonna go back to Matthew today because I don't want to step on my own toes for next week when I do what I should have been doing this past week when I was sick. So, very good question. Very good question comes up, and it pertains to what has been going on in the Rittenhouse case. Surely you've not been hiding under a rock. Surely you have at least heard about what's going on with the Kyle Rittenhouse case and everything about self-defense and things like that. And so the natural question comes up, especially a Christian question, is how should a Christian view self-defense? Is there some sort of biblical precedent that we could give that we could say, yes, we can, or no, we cannot defend ourselves? That's the question we want to answer today. Can a Christian defend himself or herself? Can a Christian defend his family? So let's say somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night. Are you allowed to protect your family? Very good question. Now, when we get into this, I want to already deal with the other side of the argument right at the beginning, okay? There is a pacifist view. There is a pacifist view that says, well, if somebody strikes you, you're supposed to turn the other cheek. And of course, they get that from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, when Jesus said, if somebody smacks you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. But let's look at what the text actually says, okay? I'm going over to Matthew. I'm in Matthew chapter 5, and you might want to turn there yourself so that you can see this. In fact, it might not even be, it's Matthew chapter 5. It's right before Matthew chapter 6, and right after Matthew chapter 4. And it's in the section dealing with retaliation. And Jesus says in verse 38, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you." So the pacifist view would go directly to this kind of text, and they would say, well, just, look at verse 39, when Jesus says, if somebody smacks you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Okay, what we have to understand about this text is that this is not about not defending yourself. This text is not about defending in a violent situation. This is not about defense at all. This is defending your reputation almost, okay? Because what's going on is Jesus is describing an insult. He's not describing somebody that's attacking another person, trying to kill them, trying to harm them. And we know that because Jesus' key words is what? Are what? Jesus' key words are what? I know my grammar friends will get me if I don't correct myself. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. So, most people are right-handed. And if you're in the Middle East, which Jesus certainly was, you don't use your left hand for a whole lot, okay? And that is because you use that hand to wipe. So people are dominantly right hand. So how are you going to take your right hand and smack somebody on their right cheek if they're facing you? You can't go like this. That's smacking on the left cheek. What's going on is a backhand. Jesus is describing a backhand, which is an insult. It's not about harming the other person, trying to take their life. It's an insult. He's saying if somebody decides to insult you, don't insult them back. 1 Peter talks about this. Don't revile back. If somebody reviles you, Jesus didn't even do that. Somebody reviled him, he never reviled back. It's not talking about defending your person or defending your family, okay? And unfortunately, and I've heard this before, I can't remember where I heard it, but some of my own brothers and sisters who take the pacifist view would say things like, if somebody comes in to, rape your wife or something like that in the middle of the night, well, you can't really do anything to stop them because they're doing evil and you have to let them do it. My friends, that is wrong. That's not moral. That's not good. That's not good at all. And of course, there's something just deep down inside of you that says, nope, no. I can tell you what, if somebody decides to come in and harm somebody I love, harms my child, harms my spouse, whatever it is, I'm not going to sit back and take it. I'm going to stop them, okay? And I'm going to make the argument that is the Christian thing to do. That is the right thing to do, is to defend yourself, defend your life, defend your family, defend your spouse, your children. That is not just the right thing to do, that is the godly thing to do. And in order to prove that, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back to the Old Testament in Exodus chapter 22. In Exodus chapter 22, something is given in God's law that speaks to this very issue. Now, okay, very important before we get into this, okay? The concept of theonomy. We've talked about this before. And theonomy is all about God's law. If you take the view that there is a new law and a old law, you can't go back into the Old Testament to get certain principles out of it because that's the old law. It's separated and it's done with. What I am suggesting is that God's law has always been around. We have one of our shepherds here, one of our elders, did a great class on the Ten Commandments and God's law and how God's law is not cut up into different sections. God's law has always been around. And it continues to be around. It was around in the book of Genesis, even before the giving of the law set in stone, no pun intended, and it will continue to be around. The moral law of God, the moral abiding principles of the law of God revealed in the Pentateuch have always been around, and they will always be around. The Old Testament, there is no old law. God's law always exists, always. Now, the only things that we don't follow today are the ceremonial aspects of the law. But there are principles in the civil area of God's law, and certainly all the moral aspects of God's law revealed in the Pentateuch that we would most certainly abide by. And here's the thing, okay? Here's proof that you believe this too. There are some things in the law of God in the Old Testament that aren't repeated in the New Testament, but that this is wrong, okay? Here's a good one. Ready? Bestiality. Is there a passage anywhere in the New Testament that condemns bestiality? If you're going to have a new law versus old law mindset, you're kind of caught, aren't you? Because there is none. There's no passage in the New Testament condemning bestiality. Where do you go to get any sort of authority from that? The Old Testament, because God has already spoken on that in the Old Testament, okay? Now, some would like to kick the can down the road, and that's all they're doing is kicking the can down the road and say, well, the New Testament, the new law, does condemn bestiality whenever, discussion of sexual immorality comes up, the word porneia, okay? Because that's more of an umbrella term that covers, homosexuality, bestiality, pedophilia, a whole bunch of different stuff. But here's the thing. How do you know that that's an umbrella term, and how do you know what things are covered underneath that umbrella? Unless you go back to God's law, which has always been around since the very beginning, since the beginning of time itself. You have to go back to the law of God. So, with that, okay, with a theonomous worldview that we're doing here, okay, we're going back to Exodus chapter 22, and we want to read verses 3 and 4, okay? So here's verses 3 and 4. I'm sorry, the preacher got it wrong. It's verses 2 and 3. Okay, if a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But I don't want to just cut it off there. But if the sun has risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. So here you don't have a ceremonial aspect of the law being talked about. You have a civil thing going on as it pertains to ordinary everyday life in the Israelite community. And the civil aspect here is that if somebody breaks into your house at night and you kill them, there is no blood guilt for them. Why? Because they're breaking in at night. You don't know what they're there for. You don't know what they're doing. All you know is that you, your spouse, and your children are sleeping. So the natural thing, the God-given instinct to all of us, the natural thing to do is to defend your house, is to defend the ones you love, like God does. And so if that ends in them being killed, there's no blood guilt for that. Now, interesting thing, okay? And I do want to talk about this. Verse 3. But if the sun has risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, he shall be sold under his theft, for his theft. So, okay, if it comes to the point of, what, if they're breaking in the middle of the day, you know why they're there. They're there to steal your stuff. It comes to that kind of mindset. And if you kill them during the day, well, then there's blood guilt for them because they're there to kill your stuff. You know that you most likely know that they're there not to rape and not to kill. They're there to take your stuff. Which comes to the idea of if you do get caught in a self-defense situation, the first inclination shouldn't be, I want to kill this person. It should be, I want to stop this person. Now, the potential is always it might end up in somebody dying, because you're trying to protect something. But if you can stop him without killing him, that's the preferable thing. So we see in the old law, okay, God has made provisions for this kind of thing. That if somebody breaks in, you're allowed to defend yourself. You're allowed to defend yourself. You're allowed to defend your wife, your children. In fact, that's the godly thing to do, brothers and sisters, is to defend them. Okay? That's not in the realm of popular opinions today. I understand that. But at the end of the day, it's not my opinion. It's what God says. It's what God says and what God allows in his law. Okay? Now, there is a There is a further aspect to this that can be extrapolated out of New Testament themes, okay? Like stuff like 1 Timothy, where Paul says if a man doesn't provide for his house, his relatives, especially the members of his own household, he's worse than an unbeliever. The principle there is that you're providing for them. Is it just financially providing for them? That's the big one, but it's not just providing financial stuff for them. It's providing security. It's providing spiritual well-being, a whole bunch of stuff. You're a provider. The head of the household, the man, is the provider for that house. And that includes protection. You protect what you love. You protect whom you love. I think it would be a great wrong if we decided that we're not going to protect a life because I don't want the wicked person to think that I hate them or something along those lines. This conversation can go a whole bunch of different ways. But I just wanted to briefly cover this topic today just to give us something to chew on. You hear stuff all the time in the news of people breaking into people's houses at night and, they either kill the children or do something so terrible as to sell them into slavery or something heinous, okay? And what happens? Well, somebody's trying to stop them, at least. That's just a natural thing that God built into us, and it's a good thing to defend your house. So when it comes to self-defense, God makes no prohibition against defending your own life. Okay, even if you're on the street and somebody decides to rush at you, threatening to kill you, you have the right, the God-given right, to defend your life. Okay, now that also speaks to being in the right situation. Why are you in a certain situation to be in a position where you could be hurt? Why are you there in the first place? Okay, and that's another discussion. But God has made it clear that you can defend yourself, and there is no blood guilt for it. Now that's interesting because going back to God's moral law that has always been around, if you read Genesis 9:6, in fact, I'm going to read it for you right now. I believe it is Genesis 9:6. Genesis 9:6, yeah. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. So right there is the moral law of God that has existed for all time before the Ten Commandments were ever written. You spill somebody's blood, okay, and you deserve to have your blood spilt as well, because mankind is created in the image of God. We have worth and value, each and every single one of us. We all do. And so to take the life of another person or to attempt to do so is wickedness, is terrible. It's to spit in the face of the creator of that image bearer. And so it speaks volumes when in Exodus 22, we see that there's no blood guilt for that person, when under normal circumstances for murder, there is blood guilt. You're to have your blood spilt because you spilt the blood of another person, but not for the person breaking into your house, trying to take your life or do something else, things that I don't want to repeat, that I'm sure you have heard terrible things on the news, that kind of stuff. God's made provisions for that. So it speaks volumes when God says there's not going to be any blood guilt for that person. So very important for us to understand. I think you can have something that I want you to get away from this discussion is that you can have a clean conscience when it comes to defending yourself, defending your wife, defending your husband, defending your children, okay? you should be doing that. That is the godly thing to do. I really think it is. I think that's what's portrayed in the Bible. And as we look at current cases today, and Christians' minds naturally think about, should we be defending ourselves? Are we allowed to be doing that? And X and Y and Z and everything? You can. You can do that. That is the right thing to do. That is the godly thing to do. And not to mention, okay, because I do want to make this distinction. Before we wrap it up here today, this is a relatively short episode. This is not vengeance. There is a difference between self-defense and vengeance, okay? Self-defense happens when the attacker is present tense, coming at you, trying to kill you, harm you, or your spouse or your children, and you are defending them or yourself actively. It happens at the same time. Vengeance is the act is already done, the murder's already happened, whatever it is, and you know they're already a few days away and everything, and you go out to seek to kill them. That's vengeance, and God has made it clear, vengeance is mine. I will repay. That's different. Okay, in that case, God has made provisions in setting up government in the sphere that He did. Because remember, God is the one that made government. He's the one that made that institution to operate in certain ways to dish out justice and righteousness according to His standard, not according to their own standard. So He created the sword, the government's sword, to dish out justice, and to seek out those who break the law. We don't take the law into our own hands. We don't seek vengeance. God will take care of that individual. So there's a distinction that I wanted to make. But when it comes to self-defense itself, okay, it's a good thing. You're defending your house, you're defending your loved ones, and it's the same thing that God does, okay? So wanted to leave that to you, and just wanted to give you some thoughts to chew on, and I wanted to fill the gap of having no King of the Cosmos, and I'll see you all next week. Take care, have a wonderful day, and enjoy the cold weather. Oh, and enjoy Thanksgiving. So I don't know what we're going to do next week, because Thanksgiving is going to be on Thursday. Obviously, there's not going to be a King of the Cosmos. We might just put it out on Wednesday instead. Yeah, I think we'll do that. We'll put it out on Wednesday. So take care. God bless. Love you all. See you later.